Hello, my name is Inanna Moon, and I want to welcome you to Cruising in the Light and Shadow. We are back, Merlin and I today, but back from vacation, really happy to be here, and I really want to dive in. I dangled a hint on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook that we were doing something special. And so my quote today is a little bit instructional because it has to do with this surprise I keep talking about. Our souls. So this is a quote from Elijah Hicks, who's a past life regressionist. And he said, "Our souls take on many lifetimes to explore various themes and lessons. While a person is in a trance, he or she can uncover the details of past life experiences. While visiting a past life, a person can witness events that are relevant to their current life, giving the person a deeper understanding of who they are. The understanding can come in the form of pattern recognition, relationship recognition, and losing the fear of death, among other things. Often a person will feel a sense of relief from visiting another lifetime." We have a very special opportunity here. First, let me reintroduce Merlin, who was on the podcast three episodes ago. He is a practitioner of the magical arts, writer of soulful rituals. He is the founder of Celestial, an order of the bards, ovids, and druids here in Southern California. Since the 70s, he has written many rites for the 8 major holidays, or the high holy days for pagans, the various full moons. He has conducted nearly 400 circles. I consider him a very dear friend. We've had fun putting this together. I think we have, anyway. I'll speak for myself. And I am honored to have him. He wrote many years ago a beautiful rite called Alban Elved. I will let him dive in and explain it. But we have a plan for the next 2 episodes. You're getting the background for Alban Elved today, and then the next episode, the rite will be performed, and all of you can participate in it. So, Merlin, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back here. Just a quick note. The name of the group that we are is Celestial Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids.
Oh, thank you.
And we're not affiliated with Obod in England, but we are great admirers of Obod. Now, Alban Elved, this rite is called A Trip to the Spiral Castle, and that relates to the meditation that we'll go through to get into the trance state, ideally, and then take off from there and have our experience. Now,
but today we're just going through the background, correct?
Yeah.
And then the next time will be the meditation experience. Right?
Yes, that's correct. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, just your, and also remembering that you were saying this is a great experiment because you've not done this before on a podcast or
yeah. It's
radio.
It's one thing to be out under the stars with like-minded souls,
yes,
looking into their eyes.
Yes.
And very different to be in a studio in the morning,
yes,
which is where we are right now.
Yes.
But we'll transcend that.
All right. I'll pretend it's late at night in the woods because I've gotten to be part of this ritual, and I think it's so beautiful what can happen for people.
Yay.
Take it away.
We've performed this rite since about 1990, and it's been refined over time. Every time we do it, we add something or change something or attempt to tighten it up. It's a long way to go, but we've made a start. So we've performed this rite probably for 300 or more people. We don't really keep records.
Sure.
But a lot of folks, and by far the majority of them, have had a past life experience. And the idea of this podcast is to somehow place this whole ritual in an envelope that you can open anytime you want and enjoy its benefits. Share it with your friends. Play it late at night. Okay, the most important part of the rite is the visualization that will launch you into the trance state and into the mysterious place where the past life regressions all go. Now, for my own self, I like to see my incarnations as folks on a carousel. And I'm standing and watching the carousel go by. And there are all my past lives and some future ones. And whenever I feel so inspired, I can jump onto the carousel and merge with that being, whatever the age or time frame or whatever. Oh, the full text of this rite is available on...
It's going to be on the Cruising in the Light and Shadow website. So just look up, if you're listening to this, hopefully you either went to Podbean or you went to iTunes, but you can go to the Podbean site and the file will be there. So if you want to print it out, it'll be available for you.
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated process, and I recommend a hard copy, or at least being able to look at it on your screen, because that'll help. I encourage folks to look at the rite before it's enacted, read the background material, and thus be edified and well prepared. So here's a quote to start things off from the great bard Taliesin, speaking of the Spiral Castle and the trip that one takes to get there. He says, "My chair is in Caer City, where no one is afflicted with age or illness. It is surrounded by 3 circles of fire. To the borders of the city come the ocean's flood. A fruitful fountain flows before it, whose liquor is sweeter than the finest wine." Now, as Jerry mentioned, there's there's a really valid reason for getting in touch with one's past lives. I have 2 names,
Inanna and Jerry.
Oh, amazing.
Don't have to worry about it.
Amazing. The mind is so... Yeah. Okay.
It reaches back.
The waste is a terrible thing to mind. So, as you mentioned in your quote, all our fears are splinters of the root fear, the fear of death. And coming to an understanding of life's conclusion is the primary focus of every religion, as far as I can tell. If the physical world is all there is, then this life makes no sense. For us to exist and flourish and wink out is an incredibly wasteful way to run a universe, says I. Now, one of my favorite authors, William G. Gray, writing in An Inner Look at Our Western Way, our Inner Western Way, says that we must see our lives on this infinite plane against a background of infinite timelessness, and from which we, as essences, come and to which we return. In truth, there is within us an eternal component. There's something that lives on after these envelopes of flesh are gone. Say yay.
Yay.
Okay.
Verily.
Now, in the Celtic rite, there's a god form, a god hero form named Gwydion, and he's the archetypal enchanter. He's known for being a man who exists alongside the linear progression of time. And from this point, he's able to see its entire length. An underlying truth is conveyed here, which is, from a specific magical perspective, call it Gwydion's look. All points in time are accessible from one point, and all points are one point. Now, the aim and design of this rite is to create the magical mindset required to access the wheel of incarnation, and gain some knowledge of our having lived before, and thus conquer the root fear and strengthen our belief in our own immortality. That's the acorn of it right there.
The nugget of it. Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, I have only about another 50 pages of notes, so we're good.
If I could stop, though, just for a moment
sure.
to allow people to think about this idea of past lives. I've had several people come into sessions to talk about dreams that they have had, or sometimes they've gone, I don't know whether this was a dream or whether it's something that passed through my mind, and what they're often telling me about. And I leave it up to people to feel it out, except sometimes it's very clear. The thing they're talking about is not just a dream, but it is a past life. They're talking about, they're usually, when there is really a past life, that lifetime, that dream, that vision really, truly affects the life they're living now. And one of the things I learned, there was a period where, many years ago, where I was fascinated by past lives. So I got a hypnotherapist. We found out, because I'd been I think because I'd been meditating so very long, I was able to go past life to past life to past life with the hypnotherapist. But I had done shamanic journeys that took me to past lives, Druidic journeys that took me into past lives, and I came to realize that every lifetime, everything you've done, not only everything you've done, everything you've been, everything you think you hope to be, is right here with you now. And it's a lovely thing if you choose to dive into a past life or two or a few and sift through and see what comes up for you, because I believe that it's spirit, your own higher guides, your own higher good, taking you through and pointing up perhaps something that's needed at this time, or it's a memory. It's simply a memory of where you've been and what you've done and who you've been, and it comes back to you, and it's the joy of bringing it back into your experience that I find so enchanting about past life journeying.
Oh yay, it's been the way for me too. So
Okay.
I concur.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad to do this. This is so exciting.
Yay.
Please continue.
I will.
All right.
So the Rite is heavily influenced by Celtic magic, and specifically by the Welsh, whom I greatly admire, and may in fact have been one of in a past life. So
Or this
the
life.
source, or this life, the source of this Rite is a poem, Old Welsh poem, written in the 5th or 6th century, as I understand it, called Praidhu Anum, or the Spoils of Anum. Anum being another world, or the other world. Some say it exists simultaneously with this one, but in a slightly shifted dimension. Some say it's heaven. Some say it's the earth itself. Up to you. The poem's attributed Taliesin, the great Welsh bard Taliesin. And as far as the poem is concerned, I would rather call it the nature of the other world, with Anum as the lake of spirit from which we merged. That's my view on the matter. So occasionally this collective ethereal place state manifests itself as incarnated human beings, presumably one of which you are. And enacting this rite, as I was hearing Inanna say, we ideally remember that we are an extension of the infinite. Finite beings, an extension of the infinite through knowledge of past lives. Say yay.
Yay.
Okay. So, a number of different people have interpreted the poem Praidhu Anum, including Robert Graves, whose version I'm going to read, John Matthews, and a great favorite of mine, Robin Williamson. So here's the poem. And just listen to it obliquely. It is not necessary to pull meaning out of it. It's really about the voyage of Arthur in the other world. So here we go. Praise to the Lord, supreme ruler of the heavens, who hath extended his dominion to the shore of the world. Complete was the prison of Gwer in Caer Sidi, through the spite of Pwyll and Pryderi. No one before him went into it. A heavy blue chain firmly held the youth, and for the spoils of Anum, gloomily he sings, and till doom shall he continue his lay. Thrice the fullness of Prydwen we went into it, except 7, none return from Caer Sidi. Am I not a candidate for fame to be heard in song? In Caer Paravan, 4 times revolving. The first word from the cauldron, when was it spoken? By the breath of 9 damsels it is gently warmed. Is it not the cauldron of the chief of Anum in its fashion, with a ridge around its edge of pearls? It will not boil the food of a coward, or one forsworn. A sword, blight flashing to him will be brought, and left in the hand of Flamenog. And before the portals of the cold place, the horns of light shall be burning. And when we went with Arthur in his splendid labors, except 7, none returned from Caer Veduid. Am I not a candidate for fame to be heard in song? In the four-cornered enclosure in the island of the strong door, where the twilight and the black of night moved together, bright wine was the beverage of the host. 3 times the fullness of Prydwen we went on sea, except 7, none returned from Caer Rigor. I will not allow praise to the lords of literature. Beyond Caer Waderer they beheld not the prowess of Arthur. It was difficult to converse with their sentinel. 3 times 200 men stood on the wall. 3 times the fullness of Prydwen we went with Arthur, except 7, none returned from Caer Colar. Praise, I will not allow praise to the men with trailing shields. They know not on what day or who caused it, or at what hour the splendid day Cui was born, or who prevented him from going to the dales of Devui. They know not the brindled ox with his thick headband, and 70 knobs in his collar. And when we went with Arthur of mournful memory, except 7, none returned from Caer Vandui. I will not allow men to praise drooping courage. They know not on what day the chief arose, or at what hour the splendid day the owner was born, or what animal they keep of silver head. When we went with Arthur of mournful contention, except 7, none returned from Caer Achrin. So each of these castles can be seen as a station on the soul's journey after death, with the final one being a place where reincarnation is possible.
And the Caer is a castle?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Appreciate it. Now, so much to say. The spiral castle is pretty much agreed to be the migratory path of our essences, Withershins whirling inward and then reversing in the center and moving back out again, sunwise into life, and then Withershins back into the center and repeating.
Moving backward, Withershins.
Yeah. Okay. So clearly Arthur was on a shamanic journey along with his company, 3 times the fill of the ship Prydwen. This suggests a group experience much like the ayahuasca rites of the shamans of the Putumayo, as witnessed by Terence McKenna in South America. So there's this line, complete was the prison of Gwer in Ker Sithi. Does that suggest that Gwer is a shaman traveler trapped by the spite of Pwyll and Pryderi in the other world, unable to return to his physical vehicle? That's a shamanic danger. If you travel out of body, you have to be sure you can get back in it. Protections are helpful. Training is good. And preparation. So, as the limitless lake of energy, Ker Sithi is our true state of being. We dwell in timelessness with occasional sojourns into linear corporeal existence. Could it be that Anum is a way of living on the earth in a disembodied state? With no corporeal form, is there no more suffering? Okay. Did you want to interject something at that point?
There's also the thought, something just briefly to ask you, there's also the thought that we are connected to our bodies in a way that cannot be terminated until you, the soul, are ready to part from the physical form. The question has come up when you go on a past life regression or you travel the astral plane, won't you always come back to your physical body? And is there anything that would stop you from doing that if you have in your free will a choice to say, no, I will not go, or I will not go with you, or I will not go away. I will come back to my physical being.
Ram Dass sees us on a clock, and we start out at midnight, and we go all the way around the clock, and each segment of the clock is an incarnation. And finally we get back to midnight again. And according to Ram Dass, then we have the choice of whether we want to go around again or stay in a non-corporeal state.
It's very,
kind of like
very yogic, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right. Just a question to put out there.
Okay, I don't think we need to talk about that. It's coming up later.
All right. So you're going to go through the 7. What will happen in the next episode when we go to the ritual? You will go through the 7 cares. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Although we will not be reading the poem during the rite.
That's fine.
It's good to have some familiarity with it beforehand. Any rate, this idea of the spiral is really important, spiraling in and spiraling out. In front of the doorway of New Grange in Ireland, there is a broad slab carved with spirals. It's part of the stone hedge. Now you can take your finger and trace the spiral, and it will lead you inward, and then it will reverse and lead your finger outward. Oh, there we are. Yeah, okay. So
it's a rattle, but it has the spiral of life connected to the heart.
The pattern, the inward-outward spiral, it typifies the pattern of birth and death and rebirth. Or as my good friend Peter Freeman says, BRB, born, reborn.
There we go. In a nutshell.
So if Ker Sithi, this wonderful place that we've been talking about, is our lake of energy where we all go, the returning 7 are seen in a new way, the 7 who survived the voyage and came back. As human incarnation is an excursion, a rarity against the disembodied eternity of Anum, then perhaps none of the others wanted to return. Perhaps they were at the top of that incarnation clock and chose to stay discorporeal. And I think that's important, that not everyone reincarnates. Or so I see it at this point in time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the cauldron that's talked about in the poem is the cauldron of Cariadwin. And as we know from our researches into setting up that rite, the appearance of the pearl-rimmed cauldron in Praedu Anum indicates the importance and the dangers of the entheogenic brute, because that was apparently, to my way of thinking, what was in the cauldron.
Cariadwin, the goddess of?
Well, a lot of things.
In this regard, you're calling on her for her cauldron and for the calling forth of life?
Yes. Cariadwin's cauldron was this mythical, and I don't mean untrue, but mythical
Right. Yes.
cauldron
Yes.
in which a hero
There's
could immerse
wisdom and
him
truth
or
to this.
herself
Yes.
and be freed of all pain and healed of all wounds, and in fact being brought back from the very brink of the dark door.
Yes.
Cariadwin's cauldron.
Yes.
Interestingly, my friend Dr. Gerald Moore says that he sees this as basically a hot pool, the cauldron of Cariadwin, into which were thrown a whole bunch of healing herbs. And I kind of like that. Of course, there's magic involved as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to note that if you have any pains, I've experienced this and talked to other people who have. If you have any pains and difficulties in this lifetime, once you travel on a journey to another lifetime, you won't have those pains for at least the duration of that past life regression. Those pains might submerge. You might feel, and it's quite possible, just a pulse of what is going on for the person whose eyes you're looking through in that past life. But your own, it's really interesting to note, your own issues will not emerge unless they are together, unless you carry that.
Okay, yeah. Fascinating. I hadn't thought about that.
It's a way to let go of issues in this lifetime.
Carrying
so
on.
much. There's so much.
Now we often pick god and goddess forms when we do our rites, and it's a way of humanizing forces that may be beyond the comprehension of us as mere humans. So it isn't to say that these are the gods, although you can if you so desire. It's more accurate to say that these are manifestations of the divine force that we choose to inspirit, and thereby get ourselves closer to this divine force. Say yay.
Yay.
Yeah. So in our rite, we're going to invoke Arianrod and Gwydion, and we'll have them dwell among us in a sphere of gold, which we will create and inspirit, and we will have them guide us as we go through this rite, or at least protect us as we go through this rite. Now, Arianrod is known by a variety of names. Rhiannon, Arian, Aradia, Aradni, and Cariadwin. Those all cognate, they all fit together. And I find it fascinating that these goddess and god forms recur across cultures and across great distances. That's a subject for another time.
Yeah. Many subjects.
Oh, okay. Now, Arianrod, as I say, is called Ariadne by the Greeks. It is she who aids Theseus through the labyrinth and in the slaying of the labrous bull-headed monster of the double axe, as Robert Graves names him. Now, the tale of Theseus sounds like an allegory of the journey to the other world of Anu. There's kind of a crossover there. The labyrinthine excursions echo the Celtic spiral path between this life and the other. In and out of Caer City, Ariadne and Cariadwin are both helpmates to the traveling soul, in this case Theseus.
So he's the human traveling with
Yeah.
The god, the Lord and the Lady, the god and the goddess.
And allegorically going through the other world.
Yes.
In the ancient world, there was a lot of trading going on. And traders would carry their cultures with them and share the tales. And I think that that's the source of all of this crossover. But I think it also speaks, whoa, stay, big fella. It also speaks eloquently of the fact that we as human beings are hardwired for a series of religious experiences that we're drawn to and that happen for us during our lifetimes.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Now, as Arianrhod, she is also called Silver Wheel, and a reference here is to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. So we could say that Arianrhod is like the best source of past life knowledge. The silver wheel also harkens to the wheel of stars, the ring of stars that the Celts call the Northern Crown. It's her spiral castle and her diadem, and she is often depicted thus adorned, for she is the Queen of Stars. Now, Gwydion, I like Gwydion a lot. He's the premier enchanter of Welsh myth. He's the wizard god. He has power over the earth and the skies. He is the essential shapeshifter, the father of, with Arianrhod, of Lula Gifts, and his tale is in our Lamas Rite, which you can access if you contact me. So, to circumvent a Gessa laid upon Lu by his mother, Gwydion uses his magic to create for him a woman of flowers named Blodeuwedd to be his wife. Now, Gwydion knows all there is to know about the craft, the seasons, and times. He knows the very number of the winds and the dimensions of the earth. Yeah. Now, Gwydion also cognates with Hugh Gadarn, who is another great Celtic god for him. You see, it all sort of merges together there. Now, together, and this is important, Arianrhod and Gwydion are the balance, the intuitive and the logical, lunar and solar, the keeper of Anum and its plunderer.
The anima and animas, the masculine and feminine perspective that we each carry with us.
Ideally.
What
In greater or lesser degrees.
We find our own balance.
That bit by Taliesin that we read at the beginning, my chair is in Caer Sithy, where no one is afflicted with age or illness. Taliesin, it's a lovely bit of corroboration from the shaman bard of Britain. It illuminates the cosmology that we're talking about here. By saying his chair is in Caer Sithy, he implies that this timeless place is his home and natural state of being, and thus in a non-corporeal state, he's in timelessness, leaves us free to be freed from afflictions. So, okay, this incarnation is not our natural state. Timelessness is our natural state, and we can access this state, ideally, at will. Now,
we are the unlimited essence of life.
Yes, or as some Celtic writers say, the circle of life.
The circle
We're
of
on
life.
the wheel, which is an interesting thing to wrap one's mind around. Now, in the poem, he also talks about 3 circles of fire. And William G. Gray, praise his name, delineated this fairly accurately in his book, A Look on Our Inner Western Way. Now, he saw this triple circle of protection as 3 concentric spheres of red light. And the way that works is, it's starting in the north and going around the circle, and then that forms a kind of circle, and half of that is a hoop, and that hoop will then go over the top, underneath, and around back to form a sphere. And the same thing is repeated east to west and above and below. And each of these spheres is concentric. They fit one inside the other. It's all a visualization, of course, and it's a way of protecting oneself. Now, I wanted to mention...
So this is part of the protection.
It is.
All right.
Now, working magic, as my teacher says, lights you up on the astral like a neon sign. And you want to be as protected as possible. Casting circle, calling quarters, wearing amulets, many etc. are all ways of enhancing this protective energy that you would have around you. Now, make no mistake, this is... This rite
and chanting
is
also.
Yeah. But I wanted to say that this rite is one of the two most serious rites that we do. The one that most approaches real magic. And I hope that you can get a lot out of it, but I also caution you to treat it with respect. Say yay.
Yay.
Now, it's also mentioned in the poem that there's a fruitful fountain. And this implies to me that that which is sweeter than any wine is the knowledge of past lives, because that will guide you, thank you very much, Inanna, to a degree in this life. It's interesting to go into this rite with a question in your mind, or that relates to something currently going on in your life, that you might get an answer for from one of your past or maybe even future selves. Yeah.
That's true, too. It isn't going into a past life regression might become a future life that you're projecting into.
Yeah.
Some people get confused. It's like, but that doesn't seem like any past I've heard of. It might well be a future self. But then we also live in a circle.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
Too.
There are days when I can envision that, and other days when it's a little bit beyond me. Now, the trance part of the rite has 7 sections. The first one is yogic relaxation. And when we're doing this on the hill under the stars at night, and ideally under the moon as well, we'll lie down on a prayer rug or a mat or a sleeping bag or something to insulate us from the ground, with our heads in the center of the circle. It's arranged in kind of a spoked wheel. And we'll do this yogic relaxation where we'll tense muscle groups, starting with our feet and then moving on up to our hands and brows and jaws, and finally releasing the energy out the tops of our heads as a way of just sort of loosening up, getting the energy centers aligned and moving forward.
And it's that Kundalini spiral that's within you from your root chakra spiraling all the way up and through the crown.
Yeah. Now, I would point out, never clench your chest. That's bad. Everything else can be clenched, but don't please clench your chests.
Open your heart. Yeah.
Okay, the second part is basically setting the scene, and I will guide you back through the sonorous, if somewhat monotonous, sound of my voice. Say yay.
Nay. That's a lovely voice. There will be chanting in this rite that you can join in with, especially if you print out the rite beforehand. And again, that grounds and centers you in many ways.
Oh, that's a wonderful point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chanting's important. It gets everybody vibrating in the same way.
Yes.
So it's a bonding experience. And then
Truly.
there's a visualization that comes with the chant that also helps. And as you say, it's very grounding.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And centers you in the masculine, feminine, the whole spectrum of you. So that's why yogis have a sense among the things that yogis would say about chanting, that would be one.
Yeah.
It clears you and opens you and prepares you. So
Yeah, ideally.
yes.
So the third step is the actual visualization of the triple sphere of protection that we talked about. So after you're stretched and at peace with your body, and the scene has been set, you set up the protections, and then after that, the fourth step is the rising of the light body. This involves separating your light body from your physical body. And there are detailed instructions on how to do this in the second part of this podcast.
Good.
Yeah. Then there's the ascension. Your body flows down a long hallway, and as you walk, you grow ever younger.
Yes.
And finally, you get back to a 0 point where you are pure spirit, completely etheric, and as removed as possible from the physical self. All that remains is a certain awareness that you
Yes.
are also a physical body in a physical realm, but you are also all of these other people that you have been before. And then, when you emerge from the hallway, you find yourself in a domed chamber that's all around doors. And you summon the record keeper. And the record keeper, it's always good to test the record keeper. Ask him a question, or her a question, or it a question, depending. I had an otter one time. That was fun.
Oh.
And that qualifies them as being a legitimate record keeper who can take you to a past life that will suit you. Now, this being will point you to a door. And then the seventh step, you go through the door, and when you are through the door, you will be in one of your previous incarnations. Say yay.
Yay.
Okay.
And just for a moment to say, many people already know that in rites like this, you're looking for your white light protection. That's what this would be.
Yeah.
The white light protection that allows, it's one more protection, and you walk through the doorway and into the experience. So
Yay.
your gatekeeper there helps you
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Now, just as an aside, Britain has been called the island of the strong door. And I believe that strong door has shamanic implications. And that being able to walk through this strong door is one of the gifts of the shaman, where the shaman would go to bring back healing knowledge or insight or whatever was required. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I'll just briefly
Yay.
go through. Thank you. Yay, I got a yay. Okay. So, a couple of words on preparing for the rite.
Yes.
This is helpful. And again, I encourage you to go to the site, download the rite, and read it on paper, because that way it echoes in your own mind. You can pause and rephrase things in your own words, and it'll make a lot more sense. So, as I was saying,
So we are preparing for the ritual now.
this is a rite of serious magical intent. So, not something to be taken lightly, but something hopefully that will open one's mind to new possibilities. So, let's agree to all do the following, if possible, on the day of the rite. A ritual bath with hyssop oil. This is always nice. Dressing magically from the skin out. And be prepared to leave as much of the mundane world behind as possible. Put down your phone, please. Now, this is a point of power, so it's kind of important. Now, if you're going to be doing this outside from the printed version, that's well and good, but be comfortable. Don't go out to a freezing place and freeze. You have to be warm enough to think magically. Bring something to lie upon because you will be supine for the work of the rite. Supine is good. You can leave the body parked there. It'll be fine. Also, I would advise fetching along an offering, like this apple, for the spirits of the place that you're doing your work. When we're doing our work on the hill, we leave apples by the haunted corner, which is a story in and of itself. But by and by, there's always someone who takes those apples, some horse or beaver or some hungry predator, and it gets ate. Also,
and that is spirit receiving your offering.
ideally, yes. And then the last thing is some fasting and yoga will help if that works for you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I think we can stop there.
All right. All right. Excellent. So you feel we're starting to celebrate now. So you feel that people are now prepared for doing the rite. But I would also say that if you are not certain about some things, or you've had experiences that are difficult, or you're just troubled to some extent about performing a rite on your own, I would say do not do any rite, any ritual, until you feel very comfortable with it. You're welcome during this next podcast when the Alban Elved rite is performed to join right in, or it will be up in Podbean and on iTunes and on YouTube, and you can listen to it, go back and read the rite, think about it, feel your way through it, and experience it any time that you wish. This is what I thought was an exciting thing, that any time you can come back to it also. You might do it one time, but you might want to come back to it and try it again. And of course, the more comfortable you become with anything, the more you will experience. I want to say, so the rite will be on my website. That's inanamoon.com. And there will be a link on it on Podbean to my website. But also you should be able to find it on Merlin's Celestial website. And what is that link?
Celestialorder.org.
Celestialorder.org.
Yes,
okay.
No space, one word.
All right. And you don't mind if people connect to you through email?
I would prefer that. I like that.
All right.
Yes.
All right. And through and so your email address is?
Hi, my email address is merlin9@yahoo.com, and the trick spelling is MYRRHLYN, number 9@yahoo.com. Myrrh being a fragrant herb, and
yes.
Lynn being a small brook. So think
Yes.
fragrant brook.
And that email address will be on the Podbean site for this episode as well. I have just one brief announcement. Upcoming on September 22nd is an all-day event called Luminescence Festival LA. It will have workshops on yoga, healing. There will be music, arts. There will be a sound bath. I personally will be offering individual sessions for people during the day, intuitive sessions and channeling sessions. And then later in that day, I will also be doing a mediumship demonstration and just answering questions basically on what it means to channel and what it means to present mediumship. So please join us. The event is from, let me see, yes, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Again, on Sunday, September 22nd. There are tickets available on Eventbrite. And this too will be on my website as well. All right. Just to close for the day, again, I want to thank you, Merlin, and see you next time. Thanks to Paul Preston, our podcast technician, to Allison Warner for her social media guidance, and to Kevin MacLeod for his wonderful music. Keep cruising through your light and your shadows, and blessed be.